Okay, who were the owners at that time?
Ron, Robert, Bob Armstrong,
Okay.
Roy Welch, and other stockholders.
Okay. Now, speaking of Bob Armstrong, the story and the question everybody wants to know is, how did Bob Armstrong come to turn bad guy?
Well, that's kind of a funny story, and from time to time in the wrestling business you need to change up what you're doing. And Bob had always been All-American Bob Armstrong, firefighter Marine from Marietta, Georgia. And decision was made that he would go over to the heel side. And several things were tried, and it was kind of like every time he'd go out, even after doing some dastardly things all the way around the territory, about half the folks would still cheer for him, and half of them were kind of semi-boo him.
Yeah.
So in a meeting one day, I made I came up with the dumb idea. I said, look, you ever thought about, nobody has ever touched me in all these years, no wrestler's ever laid a hand on me and harmed me. I said, if we work it right, and we kind of agreed on all this working together, that if we kind of built up an animosity between us over several weeks' time, and then him actually slapped me on the air, on tape, that maybe that would help out. Well, it'd been through a world championship match with Ron Fuller had, and they had brought Bob in, his buddy's a special referee, a few months before that. Bob had ended up messing over Ron in the deal, and so Ron had just retired from wrestling. We did this tape where when Ron retires, he gives me his robe, the tights, the boots, and all this kind of stuff, and we put in a box, and we kind of like a funeral we had, but I was the one, I was his best friend, and he wanted me to have this stuff. So this was by no means meant to happen in the way that it happened, but it was just one of those deals that we had planned in so many weeks that we would do the deal, and I'd take the slap, and Rick Stewart was working some with us then, so he would take over the show about the time I took the slap that day, which was in the first segment, and I was just going to walk off and leave. As fate would have it, the day before, on Friday the 13th, 1983, my first son was born, who is now 23. And wrestling was not the only thing I did. I did an early morning radio show on the leading country station there, WTVY-FM, and of course was working in the same building with WTVY-TV. And that morning, of course, I was not on the air because I was at the hospital with having baby. They had the morning show on the television. About 8 o'clock the baby was born. They announced it on the morning show, and even at 6 o'clock that evening, the anchor, John Williams, at 6 o'clock news said, we'll get to the news in a moment. We want to first of all congratulate our cohort with the FM and Southeastern Wrestling, Charlie Platt, on the birth of his first child, called the name out, gave the weight and everything. So there wasn't too many people around that area that didn't know that I was a new papa. Well, we do the slap thing, and it's on tape, mind you, in the first segment of the show. And I called relatives to just let them know, hey, if you're watching this afternoon at 5:30, you're going to see me get slapped. I'm okay, no harm done, we're just making money, trying to draw a crowd. Left it at that. The tape starts airing at 5:30. Within 15 minutes of the tape being on, we get a call in the room there at the hospital from the assistant administrator, wanting to know, was there any way I needed to call the TV station and please get the TV station to announce not to call the medical center, because everybody knew we were at the medical center. Well, what had happened, people were so outraged about the deal, and I think the fact that I was a new daddy and this, that, and the other had a lot to do with it. But the steam that Bob was lacking got heaped on his head pretty heavy. And there were actually so many calls coming in, it was jamming down the switchboard at Southeast Alabama Medical Center. Anybody with a 793 number was having a hard time getting calls, and if you tried to call a 793 number out of the 3 exchanges in Dothan, you get a busy, fast, busy signal, busy trump. And so I went to payphone, called the TV station, and asked the director on duty, I said, run a crawl. You know, obviously we can't go back and redo anything, it's airing. And they did run a crawl, please do not call the medical center. Charlie, baby, and mama are all okay, da-da-da. I thought, well, that was interesting, and about 6:35, quarter till 7 comes along. You got to understand, we were going from TV from 5:30 to 6:30 into live matches 8:30 at the farm center. Well, nurse comes and knocks on the door. Room says, Mr. Platt, could you come out and talk to these people in the lobby, maternity area of the hospital? I said, who is it? Said, it's bunch of soldiers. I said, okay, walked out there, and it was some National Guard guys that had been drilling that afternoon and watched TV.
Yeah.
They want to know where Bob Armstrong stayed, what motel he was in.
Oh my God.
They were going to go whip his ass.
God, no.
So, and then the tape goes from Dothan into the other markets the next 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, Bob is a successful heel.
Yeah.
All because he slapped a new papa. But it was funny the way it took place, and that is part of the heaviness of the heat that was on Bob. Mm-hmm. Is why when I did come back 2 weeks later to the show, it was Bob's request that I slap him. I said, you know, that don't make a whole lot of sense. He says, if you had every knife drawn on you that I've had drawn on me, and people trying to kill you, you got to take some of this heat. And that's where the slap with Ron Fuller, we brought it back, and I slapped Bob and slapped him a lot harder than he slapped me. And that was strictly by, Bob, bless his heart, had the flu that day. He was covered with sweat. I have on contact lens, this is this new thing they got, called monovision. One set for way out there and one set for right here. Mm-hmm. But without the contacts, Bob and Ron and I are members of the Coca-Cola Bottle Society with glasses. We all have serious vision problems. And I had gauged the slap pretty well, and Ron had come in behind Bob and scooped him, and when he did, I started to lay the slap, and about the time it was supposed to be there,
yeah,
Bob was sweating so much because of the fever, he slipped and slipped into me. And I felt this hit that jawbone a lot harder than what I had intended to do. But it was interesting.
Now, is it true Bob was having trouble leaving the arenas at that time, getting home?
Oh, yeah. He, I forget the exact number. It was like every sheriff's deputy that was working that first night at the farm center had to get him out of there. It was really a heated issue. And it all because of the baby being born. And then once again, we did not back time it to happen that way. It just happened that way. And people really hated him for a while after that. But that was one of the hotter angles that ever happened down there.
I would say it is.
You remember it?
Absolutely, like it was yesterday.
It was hard to go places for Bob. I think that and his fear of snakes.